in the chat. And I hope that we have ample time to dive into all those questions and have a good shared discussion and opinions about what is needed for schools like this. As I was introduced, I'm also not an educator. I'm a geologist trained in geology, and became a mum. And as you do the things as a mum, you do it in the tradition of how you've been taught and how you've been raised as a kid yourself. So we started with our kids, and everything went fine until we came back from the Middle East, back to the Netherlands, when our eldest daughter actually started to become really depressed from school. And when she was 8 years old in the summer holidays, the last week before she had to go back to school again, she was crying really for a whole day, and she said, "Mommy, I'd rather be dead than going back to school." And if your daughter of 8 years old tells you that, then you know something is wrong. But we were sure that there was actually not so much wrong with our daughter. She was a bright and clever girl. She learned very quickly. So we started to look for the impact the school had on her, and especially on her motivation. And I hear actually the same reasons why you started, for example, this democratic school in Bulgaria. And I think a lot of parents have troubles with the same reasons. Sometimes the children are younger, sometimes the children are older, but at a certain moment, some children do get bored or do get depressed, or for certain reasons don't really fit in the mainstream system. And that makes people wonder, well, isn't there another way? So we were looking on the internet for, is there another way? Is there another way that you can like learning? Because I loved to learn. As a child, I never really had trouble in my school. I really enjoyed going to the university, and learning itself is really fun. So I really was looking for what does a human being, what makes a human being really motivated for learning? What is it? And I think it is genuine interest and genuine curiosity and searching for meaning that is at the level that you're interested in, not that somebody else thinks that is interesting for you, but that you are self-interested in certain things and you want to know more and you want to dive into things. So we came on the website of the Sudbury Valley School, and the first time I looked at that website, I read children are free to do whatever they want, and there's no curriculum, no lessons, no classes. And I thought, this is a crazy place. That can't be, children can't be learning there. That's crazy. You can't play all day. What are you doing? So I clicked away this website, and my husband also, he watched this website, and but one way or another, our curiosity was sparkled. So we went back to look at the website and to read a little bit more about it. And then whenever you read more about it, you start to read about that students or young people go into life and still continue in going to colleges or becoming entrepreneurs or doing whatever their interests brings them. And then suddenly we realized that, there might be another way to grow up in this society. And there might be another way to do it. And that's just not the way that we were taught. So in principle, we decided, yeah, we really want a kind of school like that in the Netherlands as well. And similar to your group, we started to gather with a group of parents, and a few of them were also primary school teachers. And we started to establish a first democratic school in the Netherlands, and that was back in 2003 that we started here. And Willemijn, our eldest one, she was 10 in that time, and the youngest two, they were 8 years old when they went to this school. And they never been in regular education anymore since then, till the moment that they actually chose themselves to go back to do higher education, or to go to follow another path. Especially the youngest two did that. So that was actually the beginning point, and we were really intrigued by the Sudbury Valley model, and we read a lot of the books, and we were together with a group of people who came together for the same dream of having a democratic school, but not all of them were really into this mindset of having a Sudbury model school. Because the Sudbury Model School is one of the most difficult schools, I think, in the world, because you really have to give the full trust to the child and don't organize anything apart from whatever is needed to run the school, or whatever you yourself want to do in the school. So that's a whole different story. And a lot of the parents, or some of the founders of that first school, they also thought that actually children needed to be guided a little bit more. So that went into a split, and in 2007, we split up from that school, and we started a first real Sudbury Model School. And then we dove into the management manual of the Sudbury Valley School. We translated it entirely, and then we really started to understand how the structure and the organization of the school supports the whole learning of the students, and sets the boundaries to the freedom of the students, and also supports their intrinsic motivation, but also their responsibility over the feeling that they are in charge of their lives, the feelings that they are really responsible for the whole learning, but also for their future. It's their responsibility. It's not my responsibility to do something for the future of somebody else. It's the other person who really has to feel, it's my life, I have to make something out of it. What am I going to do in order to make sure that I can earn money, and that I can become an effective adult in the society? So it's really one of the hardest schools, I think, in the world, but okay. Having said that, I think we also see that children who go to these schools, they come from the school with this self-awareness and knowledge about themselves, that they can't blame anything or anybody else. If something doesn't work, it's really them that have to do the work, and have to go after whatever their dreams are. So that's a bit of my story and my background. In the meantime, we started another school, because we had some trouble with the government here. Government didn't like Sudbury Model Schools back in 2007. I don't want to go into that too much in this talk, because my husband is much better in the whole legal background of our school. But having said that, we had some approval problems, and then finally we had to close this school, and we reopened a new school, and this was accepted by the government after that. And the only thing that we did was we knew in 2014, we knew much better what the inspectorate needed from us show them to in order to get this approval. And we didn't change anything in the school itself. So that is a bit of where we stand now. This is also that we have Sudbury model schools now in the Netherlands, and it's a possibility. And with that, we also have a very good relationship with the inspectorate. In the meantime, I also got a good, some good relationships with a professor from the university, the Open University here in the Netherlands. And at a certain moment, the idea was raised that I would start a second PhD, and I wrote a research proposal, and that was accepted last year. So in principle, I am now officially busy with my second PhD, and I can do whatever I want with it. So it's also because I don't need to become a doctor again, but I really would like to have much more research done on how these schools work and how people that come from these schools, how they will, how they develop themselves and how they will succeed in life after they leave from these schools, because I think it's needed. I think there is much more support needed to show the world that this is also a valid option. It's a different type of education, of course, but it could be for some persons a good alternative to the traditional system. So having said that, I will try to take you with me a little bit more to the background of how these schools work, or what the theory is more or less behind it. And I will quickly try to see if I can share my screen. So do you see the PowerPoint? Yeah, okay. So a little bit more background on the theory behind democratic education. One of the theories that it's actually based on it's based on how humans naturally learn from an evolutionary perspective. Obviously, I don't know if you know Peter Gray, but probably you know him. He is an evolutionary developmental psychologist, and he talks a lot about how humans learn from this perspective, and how people and what we know from how people learn in, for example, anthropological research in cultures like hunter-gatherer cultures and so forth. But one of the things that we know from the humankind is that we have a very long period of maturation. We're actually, humankind has the longest period of maturation from all animals. And that is because we need to learn so much skills, a lot of complex skills, a lot of complex knowledge that we need to learn. And I'm not talking about cognitive knowledge. I'm not talking about math or reading, because in fact, that's not really very difficult to learn. But I'm talking especially about the social skills we need to learn. The extended period is especially there because we need to learn a lot socially. And the social learning is the basis for every other learning. So the learning, for example, the physical skills or whatever you learn because you see other people doing things, you can mimic what other people are doing. But also you need your social interactions in order to build, for example, your wisdom skills, your problem solving skills, your knowledge. It all comes from the social interactions that we have as human beings. And the social skills, the way that we can deal with each other, the way that we learn to to interact and to respect each other and to work together is so important. It's really the basis of all other learning. Another thing that we know from the evolutionary developmental psychology is that the cognitive immaturity serves children's learning. And often young children are seen as very immature, as if it is a kind of deficit. They are not yet up to the level that we are, and they are, so we see them as a kind of helpless persons, as if it's a kind of shortcoming. In fact, it's not. In fact, their immaturity helps them to learn the skills and to focus on skills that are on the level of their competence at that moment in their life. And they focus only on those things that are on their level, and they're not really disturbed by things that they cannot get yet, or that is much too difficult still. So in fact, it's a kind of shielding off in order for young children to focus only on the things that they have to learn. So it's actually really a helpful tool. So we shouldn't really look at their immaturity from an adult perspective, but look much more from the perspective of what does the age and the competence of the child itself needs in its setting in order to grow and to develop. Let me see, how can I go further? Yeah. So, yeah, how do humans learn? What do we know about how humans learn? Well, this also comes from the evolutionary developmental psychology, that obviously humans learn by observing and imitating other people. They are looking a lot. If you notice, young children, obviously you see them looking or watching other people doing things. Sometimes they just watch what you're doing. They come along and they ask you, oh, what are you doing? And then they're walking away. And it has a reason. They, because observation is one of the strongest tools, I think, for learning, observing and mimicking whatever somebody else is doing. Sometimes they also listen what you're talking about. It's another way of learning what people are talking about and what is being said, and also about the content of what is being said. Children learn by exploring and trying out, especially by making mistakes, trial and error. They learn a lot by that. By conversation and discussion. Obviously, you see, especially the older group of children, like the teenagers, they use conversations and discussions and chatting all the time. They sit together and they on lazy sofas, and they're constantly talking and talking and talking. This is another way of learning. Discussions, for example, in the meetings, in school meetings or in other meetings, you can have good discussions. It's a good way for learning as well, the support of learning. For example, children learn by helping, by voluntary apprentices. So they just help you, or you ask them if they want to do certain tasks, and they do some tasks. Is also another way of learning. And then, of course, by building things and creating things, you can also learn and develop yourself in all sorts of ways. And then the biggest one, I placed it in the center almost, is by play. And I don't need to say so much about it, I think, because Peter Gray is one of the forefighters of the importance of play in the development of young people. and not only for cognitive development, but especially also for the psychological and any other kind of development. So play is really, really important. So as I said, children are competent, and they are competent learners. They are born learners, so they are skilled to learn from everything in their social world and everything around them. Children are beings rather than becomings. You know, children, they are fully human from the moment they are born. The thing is that by seeing them as becomings, we start to see them as imperfect or not yet perfect as an adult person. But they are competent on their own right on the age that they are in. So we need to respect them as a human being, treat them as equals, treat them as competent, and give them a voice and responsibility over their life and their surroundings. If you follow this, if you think that a child is a competent human being, and the society actually increasingly sees them as incompetent and vulnerable and in need to be helped and protected. And I'm not sure how it is in Bulgaria, but that is in the Netherlands. It's actually really the case. You see this in the past years. You see it. You see politicians decide that children need to go to school earlier. They have to do certain things. Whenever there is something important, then they say, well, it has to be put in the curriculum because children need to learn it. They don't even think about that children might learn it already by just talking and interacting with the world that they are in. Children need autonomy. Well, autonomy is the freedom to act and to make your own choices. And they show it already by that they like to play or they like to explore away from adults. They like to be, in that sense, autonomous on their in their play. They don't want the interference thing. In things that matter to them. So they don't want constant interference in the things that they are doing. You might know the attitude of children that they have. Well, I want to do it myself. They also show this psychological reactions against coercion, like the demotivation, apathy, and submission. And you can recognize that at any age, even with very young children. We even had a boy who was he was 5 or 6. He was already really demotivated and depressed from school. And what you see in society is a trend towards an increase of control of children, taking their freedoms away and taking away their autonomy. And that's actually sad. And children need relatedness. Children need a social context with which they can relate, a context with their friends, their peers, a context with caring adults who do not judge, a context where they are respected as a human being, and also a predictable context with clear norms and values. In principle, they need a context, a place where they can feel secure and at home. And these three needs, the need for autonomy and the need for competence and the need for relatedness, they are the three basic needs that support intrinsic motivation. according to the self-determination theory by Daisy and Ryan. And you can find a lot of information on the internet. They have a website, a lot of articles, you can download them, are posted over there. And I think this is a really strong support of the context that democratic schools build. They build actually contexts where children are autonomous, are seen as competent, and can act on the level of their own competence, and where we build a surrounding where relatedness is really important, a sense of belonging, being involved, a feeling of being at home, being respected in a social context. So one of the, wait a minute, one of the things is have confidence in the child. And in principle, that is the most difficult pedagogical instrument. Trust is it's really difficult. And this is maybe a good thing to talk about and dive into when we have the time to have a little bit of interaction, because the trustful, oh, why isn't it working? Oh yeah, here. I did a very small phenomenological research. It wasn't really big, but I presented a poster last year on one of the conferences, and I took two accounts, two stories, one of Larry Welshon and one of Hana Greenberg, about the role of staff in two different Sudbury schools, and how the leave kids alone or doing nothing approach is described in support of the basic needs in a self-governing Sudbury model school. And if I took a look at these articles, it really showed that leaving people to engage in the world as autonomous individuals, be there for them when they need you, is in support of autonomy. Being attentive and caring, and at the same time not directive and coercive. It was said, leaving them alone, to do nothing. That is actually was described as the support of their autonomy and also their competence, so that they could interact with the environment on the level of their own competence. Explaining it from a staff member's perspective, they said, well, the more I'm able to do this, the better is my work. And the other one said, it is a pedagogical tool actively used to teach them to listen only to themselves and not to others. And that is quite important, that children are influenced by a lot of influences from outside, perspectives from their parents, perspectives from their grandparents, their whole friends, perhaps friends that are on different schools. They get a lot of information, and sometimes also there are how do you call it? Parents want them actually to do certain things because they think it's better for the child if the child would do certain lessons or follow certain courses or would do certain things. And it's very difficult for a child to come to the point where they really start to listen to their inner voice and think, okay, this is really what I want. This is not what the world around me wants, but this is what I want. This is good for my life. This is my choice. This is why I want to do this. In order to do so, the staff in the school refrains from interfering with the children as much as they can. which is a very difficult concept because it's sometimes seen from the outside world as if we do nothing, you know, leave those kids alone, we do nothing. And the do nothing approach is really, really difficult as a staff member. And then have said that it's never without relatedness. And then what you see, what they write about relatedness is that they need an environment that is like a family. It is supportive and safe. It thrives in a vital and complex community which the staff stabilizes and perpetuates. And they say that it's under our caring and supportive concern. So there is a lot of relatedness, what they talk about it. And even if you talk about relatedness, they contrast in order to make it even more stronger. And they say it cannot be done in a vacuum of isolation. Yeah, so you need relatedness. Our abstaining from telling students what to do is not perceived by them as a lack of something, an emptiness. So we don't tell them what to do, but we are there. We sometimes walk along, we talk with students, we say, hey, how are you doing? I see that you're struggling. You know that I'm there. If you need me or if you have a question, come to me. And then they know that you are there. But I will never, ever tell a student, you know, why shouldn't you do this? Or isn't this a nice idea to go to do that? It's their trouble. It's their moment of reflection that they need in order to find out what they really want, their inner compass. And then it was said, please don't draw the conclusion that the staff is superfluous. And they also said that it doesn't mean that there are no interactions, just as I told you. So this is one of the most important and very difficult tools of being a staff member in the school. Diving into it a little bit more, because this is actually where the student is in. The student is in a situation where it has to decide for doing some things that might perhaps not be his first choice. So for example, he wants to become a medical doctor. So what do you have to do to become a medical doctor? In the Netherlands, you really have to do your state exams, because otherwise you're not allowed going to the university here. At least not for going to a medical university. So that's quite a big barrier. And the barrier is really huge. But if you really want to become a doctor, you really have to go and find a way to go over that barrier. So those external motives are really, really high. Sometimes they're really difficult. And then whenever they do it because they really want it themselves, they will find a way to make it happen. And they usually do it very, very well. We've had several examples of students who've been doing certain exams and they succeeded with real high how do you call it, grades. But whenever they still have this feeling, oh, I have to do exams, not really because they want to become something, but when their parents or their surroundings, or they have this feeling, I really have to do these exams because it's something that is required or something that is expected of me. They don't do it because of their own choices. And then what you see is either that they are doing it because it is a will to please, they do it because they want to comply. They usually don't get the good grades. They will pass with 6s or the lowest numbers. You can have that they stop doing it, become apathetic, being demotivated. Or sometimes you see that they start to rebel and they throw away their life. In principle, sometimes you see, and that's what a lot of people is concerned about, that students actually will not succeed and actually won't be able to do anything or sit on a sofa and don't move anymore. It is quite difficult to come out of that and to trust a child and to say, okay, it's your life, it's your choice, just do with it. But just also feel that if you don't do anything, it's also your choice. And then find out what you want to do and how to achieve it. And what they need is time to figure out who they are, what their interests are, and where they can find it, how to do it. And they can, usually they start to talk with us or with other students about what they want to do and how they can achieve it, and find their ways to do it. They sometimes try out some things, and sometimes they succeed and sometimes they don't, but it doesn't really matter. For them, it is a phase that they start to understand, I have to do something, I have to move. And they need time to cognitively mature when they're ready for it. We really have to rethink the idea to rush children through their childhood. Because it is a precious and cognitive important period in and of itself. And this is also, again, from the evolutionary developmental psychology background. A little example of how children learn to read, because I've talked about maybe older children going to university or whatever, but the same motives are true for any learning to read, learning, becoming skilled in certain other things, doesn't really matter. But learning to read is just one of those skills. And obviously it is a skill that every country and government finds very important, but also every parent finds it important that their children start to read. There is a book written by Harriet Patterson. She did a Ph.D. in and she did a phenomenological research of 400 children who were homeschooled. And it was really a huge work, really interesting book. And also Peter Gray in 2016, he writes about, and they did research in how children learn to read. And he presented or he wrote an article about it. I looked into, for example, learning to read from Patterson, and I started to look on the internet for information on what ages do children actually learn to read in a free context. And I took, for example, research article of Peter Gray. I took a book of Thomas and Patterson, who were talking about ages that children started to read. I looked on an internet forum for unschoolers, and I looked for cases where people were talking about when students, when their children started to read. And I looked at unschooling democratic school forums, and I got another information source. So, and I added up all those sources and ages. And if you take a look, you see that there is quite a big range of ages in which children start to read. So some of them starts at 3-4 years old. Others, they were already learning to read at 5-6. Then at 7-8, it becomes a little bit bigger. And then the majority is almost between 9-10 years old, and then it drops off. And there was one case who was, I think, 15 or 16, which was quite an odd case, but that doesn't matter. What you see is that, in fact, there is a big range of ages that children start to read, and that the majority actually reads at around 7-8 or 9-10 years old. And actually in our school, we've seen this same, the most of them, they start to read in these age groups. And even they start to read a little bit earlier this in the last years because of the the video games that they're playing or the games that they're playing. You see that younger children start to play games or play much more games than several years ago, and the age that children start to read is earlier this in the past few years. What came out of those research articles was that there's actually no predictable way that how children learn to read. They learn it in all different ways, in all different manners. Some of them they want to be taught. Others they want to do it themselves. Others are going to sit next to you and look at what you're reading. So everybody does it in their own way. There's also no critical period for learning to read. What I've showed you, some children do start very early on, and some children are older, they're 13, 14, which is in our society a very strange age to start to learn to read, because a lot of people will really be very scared for their child not being able to read when they're around that age. But having said that, if they once they've learned it, nobody will ask them afterwards at what age did you start to learn to read? And in our schools, reading is not a necessity to develop your own cognition in other areas, because reading is just one of those cognitive areas next to, for example, knowing much more about history, because you can develop yourself through YouTube videos, you can listen to stories, you can talk with people, you can learn in all different ways. What came out of this was also the children wanted to practice it themselves quite often, rather than being taught and rather than being pushed. And finally, in the end, all children learn to read. Well, there is a huge human diversity. We are not all the same. So that came out of this research as well. And there's also not one single best method or one single best practice to learn to read or to learn. We are all different and we all have our different strategies to learn. And this is also what you see in the school. You see children really learn in totally different ways, and also in totally different ages that they start to learn certain things. So coming now to, what is the Sudbury model? I already talked about it a little bit. A Sudbury model school is based on the full age mix of 4 to 18 years in one building. So there are no age groups, there are no different areas for different ages, or so everybody is mixing together. There are no compulsory classes, lessons, nor tests. And I deliberately say compulsory because whenever children want lessons or whenever they want to be taught in something, they can organize that, and they can organize their own teacher. It can be a teacher, but it can also be an older student or maybe one of themselves. And obviously also whenever we as staff want to do something, for example, I like to talk about geology, so I sometimes hang a note on the board and I say, well, I want to talk about geology. I like to talk about volcanoes or whatever. Who wants to join? Well, that's also obviously okay. And then after sometimes when students don't really feel that they need any information anymore, it can also dissolve. There is no need to go there. There's no structure plan or whatever. Sometimes they really ask, for example, to prepare for an exam. And then you really sit together and you make a schedule with a person. And so obviously you can have a really organized lesson plan if you want. But everything is organized because the students themselves want it. There's a clear organizational structure in the school. We have a management manual. A lot is written in it. So the whole organization of the school is clear. Everybody can take this management manual and look through it and find what how the organization is, how it works and who is responsible and what the rules are and everything around it. Young people determine their own activities with or without others. The environment is real. We don't play democracy, it is real. There's a real control over all facets of the running of the school, including the hiring and firing of staff. Participation also requires commitment in the school, which means that in our school you have to do certain tasks, like, for example, you have to, so that's mandatory, you have to go to the judicial committee, and you have, for example, we have a cleaning roster and you have to do your cleaning tasks. Everybody has to do it, so everybody is doing it, like the 4-year-olds or the 16-year-olds or even the 50-year-olds, they all have to do cleaning tasks. Nobody has an exemption there. Which means that you're responsible for doing your task. Doesn't really mean that you have to do it all by yourself, or that you can't really ask somebody else to do it, but you have to make sure it's done. That's the whole point. That's the responsibility. And then we have a school with a minimum of 5 hours of attendance requirement every day. Because we are a community, you also want to have a period of time that everybody is there in order to meet each other, in order to have your school organization to be able to be run. Because if you are free to come and go whenever you want, you can't organize anything. So there is a minimum requirement of 5 hours. So what another quite important part of the school is the judicial system, which is the core of the school, and it's needed because in order to support the freedom, you need a good structure in order to keep and safeguard the freedom of every individual in the school. And freedom is really not similar to license. I don't even know what license is, but the do as you wish sentiment, like if there are no clear boundaries, and then it becomes really a chaos or an anarchy. But freedom needs rules, and it needs also a way to make sure that everybody sticks to those rules. And then finally, in the Sudbury School, students are really fully responsible for their lives and their actions. That's as far as I want to take you with me in this background story a little bit. Hope it was informative. And otherwise, just ask questions, please.
Yes, thank you, Christel. So anyone with a question, there is nothing in the chat. Please wave like that if you have a question. And I will say your name, and then you can start. Daniela?
Аз ще си задам въпроса на български, те моля да го преведеш.
Добре.
Чувате ли ме?
Да.
Какво правят, когато някое дете или някои деца отказват да следват правилата, които всички са създали заедно?
So the question is, what do you do when a child refuses to follow a certain rule, even though it is created by everyone?
Well, in the first place, there are for example, if a child breaks a rule, or if it doesn't want to stick to a rule, you tell them that we decided as a community about this rule, that he really has to stick to it. If they don't do it, then you say, well, then I'm writing you up. So, and by writing up, I mean, we have a complaint form, and I fill in this complaint form. And I write down his name, and I say, well, this happened, and there was another person who was a witness, and it happened that time, and it happened over there, and this is all, the part of our judicial system that you bring up. You just put all the details on a form, and you put the form in a place. And next morning at 10:30, the judicial committee comes together, and they take the complaint forms, and they look at what happened, and then they start to question. They start to get in the child and the person who wrote the complaint, and they're first going to ask what happened to the person who wrote the complaint, and then to the person who was put on the complaint, or persons, and they are going to investigate. So this is the investigation period. And then when this investigation is over, and when the case is clear for the judicial committee, they are going to write a report, and that's a factual report. It says, okay, on this date, this person run through the school. For example, we have a rule that you're not allowed to run in the school. So this person run through the school. So that's a clear statement. And then they are going to ask the person if that is correct, if that was correct, whether they say that they are guilty or not guilty for having run through the school. And actually, because it is really factual, it's never really a big problem. They usually say, yeah, that's true, I run. Okay, well, so guilty. And then the first time in the JC, they probably will get a warning. So JC will say, well, and that's official, you know, then they have been in this official organ already. So it gives them a little bit more feeling, okay, that it's not only one person who tells me that I'm not allowed to do this. This is a whole committee who is now telling me it's not allowed, that we have a rule here. So it has a little bit more weight to it. But next time when they do this again in a certain situation, it can come. It can happen. And then they come back, and then probably they will get a sentence for it. And then usually it is, for example, that they're not allowed to be in a certain room for a day, or that they have to do some cleaning tasks for 10 minutes, or it's not really very a big deal, but it is you have to do something back in order to to give the whole community something back for having broken one of the rules of the community. And children get to get used to it. They get used to being treated that way. They are, because they're also part of this judicial committee every now and then when they are on duty on it. So they know both sides. They know what it is to be in the judicial committee to decide about these things, and to decide about somebody else who's breaking rules. It can also be a staff member. I've been in JC, for example, then when I left my cup or whatever, I forgot to clean it up, and then obviously you're sitting in JC yourself. Because we all have to take care of our environment, and we all have this same responsibility. So we do this. It's just normal. It's normal practice. But of course, sometimes when a child to comply at a certain moment to how the school is running or how the rules are implemented. You have to make sure that they feel that it's real. It's not something that you have to get, that you can get away with, because it's that's really insecure. It's insecure for the whole community. It's not only insecure for himself or herself, but also for the whole community when a student doesn't really understand that whenever, when you want to be in a school like us, you have to accept the way the school is working. You can't have the freedom without the consequence of having also JC and accepting rules and accepting how the school is run. So yeah, sometimes when you have really a troubled child, or whenever a child has, when the support of the child from their home situation is not really in support of their taking this responsibility, because it's also responsibility in the school. They need to take this responsibility to be willing to be part of it, to be willing to become a part of the whole community. You have to accept how this community is working. So yeah, sometimes they have to leave. So finally, when you really have a troubled child who is not really complying and doesn't really understand that they at a certain moment really have to change their attitude, then you can't work with them anymore. That's part of the sad things of a school like this. But usually there's a long period of time. We give them a lot of chances, you know, we give them really a lot of chances to start to understand. Yeah.
Дани, за тебе, thank you, Christel. Is it clear enough? Дани, имаш ли още нещо за уточнение? Или да дам думата на следващ въпрос?
Yes, just one question. You also have small children in your school are forbidden to run?
Yeah, running is the worst example, maybe, because at a certain moment, even Mimsy Sadowski, she said, you can't get running out of little kids. It's impossible, you know. But you constantly have to tell them, oh, did you forget about the rule of running? You know, you can run outside, because they are allowed to run outside. So so all the time we give the warnings, especially to the younger kids. We warn them quite often, and then we don't send them to JC. But whenever you've warned a young child, and when they continue running and they don't listen, then it's a different game, because then I'm going to put a complaint for JC, because they what is really important in our school is what we call that you are open for this feedback that people give you. And it's not only the feedback that I can give, but also other students can give them feedback. They need to understand that they have to listen to the feedback that they get. And it's not complying to only the adults. It's also complying to other students who say, hey, you're shouting, it's too loud, or you're disturbing me because I'm busy here, and now you're disturbing, taking away my pen, or doing things, you know. So that is part of how do we live together in a community, and what are the boundaries of the freedom of everybody.
Thank you for your reply.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
I think that Radka had
Yes. Hello, my name is Radka, and I'm running a school in Sofia. And it's not a question, but it's just sharing. It was so informative and inspiring at the same time, and I'm very grateful. I compiled a whole new list, a reading list, from what you showed on the screen. And because I'm working now on the timetable of the school for the next 3 weeks, which will be digital 3 weeks, learning in an electronic environment. And it's a very hard job to design a timetable for meeting with kids and learning with kids through the screen, and at the same time encourage their freedom, communication, autonomy, and all the beautiful things that you mentioned. I immediately put a virtual classroom named Leave the Kids Alone, if you allow me to do so. Dave, from the first wave of learning through computers in the spring, we were asked by small children to leave them in the classroom, in the computer classroom, alone. And some of the parents and some of the teachers were really against it. They asked teachers they asked us to be supervisors or to nanny them because it's dangerous to leave them alone, which we didn't much like because they were in their homes. And how could you take care physically for children or emotionally for children that are so far away from you? But now, from what you said, I think I'll take the courage to put a lesson like that and leave them alone in a virtual classroom and just check how it will go. And the last thing, thank you very much for the running example. I felt very uncomfortable when we put that restriction to the kids in our school. And that was mainly because it was for safety reasons. Because being very young and running cautiously, they what usually happens in the end is they hurt themselves. And this is a very simple but a very good example. It's easy to, according to me, to make a child listen to you when you follow all the natural freedoms that they understand and live with. But it's very important to create that space for listening for feedback and taking others into consideration, taking your own body into consideration when the restriction is so unnatural, like, I mean, children are supposed to run, we all know that.
Yeah.
So thank you for that example. It was much better for me than having an example that's so obvious we shouldn't do that, and it's natural even for small children.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is true, and especially in a school where you have all the ages, so you have teenagers as well. So if we would allow running in the school, then the teenagers would run in the school, and that is even a bigger danger because they can run into the small ones, and that's even more dangerous. So and it usually comes with a lot of noise. So whenever you allow running in a school environment like ours, they start to chase each other, and the noise goes up, and there's a lot of roughhousing and things going on. So we say, no, not in the school. You can do that outside. You know, we don't put a restriction on. They can go outside every moment that they want. So just go outside, and hey, if you need your energy drained, go outside, please. And they can roughhouse outside, and that's not a problem. So even to the point where they can be hurt or whatever, it's also that they need their physical exercises. They need to run. They need to be able to do things. Not that we say, well, you're not allowed to do it. It's not allowed in the school. That's for certain also safety reasons. Yeah.
Okay, I saw that Irina Davidova has a question. You should just unmute your microphone because we don't hear you. Yeah.
I want to thank you for the really inspiring presentation. I would like to know something more about about that, how do you train your teachers? Do you have a specific system for teacher qualification?
Not really. We have, for the school to operate, we need certain teachers with a primary school and a secondary school certificate. So we need to have at least a few of them on board in our staff team. But what more important is that we need people who are open-minded, who are open to learn, to change their whole attitude in how they are trained as a teacher. For example, if they were teachers as a teacher, to become a staff member, because it's quite a big step to be a trained teacher, to work in a democratic school. And from other people also, because I'm not a trained teacher, but yeah, it takes quite some time. So people are invited to have a kind of practical period in our school. They can come and learn on the spot, because it's the only way to learn how you become a staff. And I've heard from a few of my colleagues that came to the school and that started to work in our environment, that they say it takes almost 2 years in order to get it really in your fingers, to really understand how the school works, how to deal with the day-to-day operation of the school. So it's a big training, in fact, for us as adults. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else with the question? Radka?
I'm sorry that I'm taking the floor again, but how do you cope with COVID? How do you cope with this situation now?
Yeah, well, the thing is, we had to close the school last summer again, because we were located in an area in the Netherlands where we were not growing enough. So we were at the maximum. We had around 20 students, but the number dropped last year. And then when COVID came, we decided that we really had to quit, because we couldn't afford the building anymore. Because of the numbers were dropping and people were not able to visit the school and to choose the school. So there was a difficulty. We had our, also from in March, April till, I think it was till June or beginning of June, that we had a lockdown period here as well, and all students were at home. So we also organized an online school environment where we had a requirement for people to come to this online environment, but it was really hard. In the beginning, students were attending, but yeah, it's not the same. We had our school meetings online, and that was actually quite well attended still, but yeah, you miss the interaction. You miss the school. These schools, they live on people meeting each other. It's quite difficult to have it online. Yeah, it's not so easy.
Thank you. And not because I don't want to take the floor for the third time, I want to thank Nelly. Благодаря ти, Nelly. Thank you for this.
Благодаря ти, yes. But if no one else has questions, Radka, you can ask again. Like, no, I will just wait for someone else. And I'll ask one of my questions then. Christel, you in your presentation, there was that there are tasks in the school, and also the requirement of 5 hours, minimum of 5 hours attendance per day. I guess that these are decided during the school meetings, as everything in this type of schools, but I was wondering, how does it work? I mean, like many kids perhaps, or some kids doesn't like to do their tasks. So are they going to the school meeting and saying, I don't want this rule and I want this rule to change? And what do you do in these cases?
Yeah, that could be that sometimes they try. But yeah, then you have to find another way to clean the school, because the staff is not hired to do the cleaning themselves. So staff will refuse to become the cleaners of the school. So it all depends on what type of school, how big the school is. I know, for example, from the Jerusalem Sudbury School that they had cleaning tasks and a cleaning roster. And then at a certain moment, they were large enough and they had money enough to hire after school an official cleaner, a school cleaner, or somebody who was cleaning the schools and the toilets and things like that. And then in the school meeting, a number of students started to say, but we don't want to get rid of our cleaning tasks. At least we want to have certain tasks still done by our school meeting members, because it is a way to take responsibility for your environment. And then it was decided that they would hire a cleaning person after school, but still some of the tasks were done by the students themselves. For example, taking the rubbish bins and putting all the rubbish bins in bins in one place, or and I don't know what they did, but I still know that they voted themselves to keep the cleaning tasks, because it is a part of feeling responsible and belonging, and getting this feeling of belonging and getting a feeling of that the school is really your environment. You have to take care of it. So it was really interesting how this was accepted by the school meeting, because their school meeting is big. You know, I went there in the time that they had around 120 students, and it was packed. The whole school meeting was packed. So they outvote staff members 10 times. You know, they if they don't want to do or refuse something, they would have voted it away. So it was really the majority of students who want to keep it. Really interesting.
Okay, thank you. A question from Elena. She wrote it in the chat. What is the role of parents in the school community? Are parents part of the school community?
Parents are part of the school community in that sense that we have certain parents evenings where they can meet each other, where we talk about themes, where we can support them, where they meet each other in order to support each other. We have festivities where parents are invited, but on the regular basis in the school itself, we don't have parents in the school, because it is really the place for the student to really it's the student's place. It's not the parents' place. So in principle, during the school hours, we don't have parents in the school as part of the school community.
Elena, do you need to clarify more, or do you want anything more around this question?
No, thank you for the answer. I think that covers what I was asking.
Actually, this led me to ask you, sorry, I'll just really quick. Does it mean that don't you have teachers whose children are in the school?
Yeah, we have, because at least I was a mother and Peter was a father, and we now have Irilike, who is mother of a young girl. But those staff members and their kids, they know quite well what the situation is, and they're not a parent in the school. They're a staff member in the school. And that's also something we always discussed with our children. You know, don't discuss home matters with us in the school. Home matters, they belong to our home. And in the school, I'm a staff member, and just treat me as one of the other staff members. Whenever one of our children were called into the judicial committee for certain things, we always made sure that another staff member was in the judicial committee. Usually we refrained ourselves from being part of it then, in order to not mix up any things or emotional, or that I would know exactly what my child had done, or what he or she had was accused of. You know, obviously you know, but we try to separate those things very well.
Mhm. Thank you. I'll ask another question from Veronica from Varna. Is it compulsory for the students to be part of the school meetings? And for instance, she says for the youngest children, it is difficult to be present in a school meeting without also making noise, and also there will be perhaps some topics that they're not interested in, etc.
Yeah. No, the school meeting is not mandatory. School meeting is the agenda for the school meeting is presented the day before the school meeting, and it's hanging on the board. Everybody can knows what is on the agenda, and only the students that really are involved and want to have a say in the organization, they usually come to the school meeting. Usually they are the older students. And if you make it mandatory, it becomes a burden. So you want this to be a voluntary choice. And obviously there are a number of students who are interested, or sometimes they are interested in certain topics. And also the youngest ones, we've had them, of course, that whenever a young child wants something, we had an example of a girl, she wanted a swing, and she organized that she could buy a swing, but then it had to be accepted, of course, by school meeting that we wanted a swing, and where the swing would hang, and what the rules would be, or who was going to be responsible for the swing. So she had to come to school meeting. But then it's something that really is something that they care for, and well, then they can just come and tell, and that's also okay. They know as well how they can get what they want. And of course they are supported. That's not something you do without support. But yeah, that's the only thing, that the school meeting is not mandatory. The JC, being part of JC is mandatory, and that is going via roster. So everybody needs to be part of JC every now and then.
Thank you. Veronica, do you need anything more on this topic?
No, thank you very much. It was great. Thank you.
Okay, another question concerning trust issue. What are the main fears in the parents, and what is the school doing? If there is anything that the school staff is doing, for example, if a parent is worried if his kid doesn't read and write.
Yeah.
First part, the second part, I'll read the second part of the question later.
Okay, yeah. Well, when parents are worried, they can always make an appointment, and then we take at least an hour to sit with parents and talk. It depends sometimes on whether it's only the father or the mother, or sometimes they're both parents that we invite in the school. And we also look at our staff team, who is the best team to talk with the parents. Because it's sometimes better if, for example, a male person is going to talk with, for example, when the father is really having the worries, it can help. Usually fathers are, they react better on another male person in your team than sitting with only women. I'm not generalizing. It's just some feelings. But you usually you look at parents and you think, okay, this team is better to talk with them. Or sometimes you have parents that really have this more feeling, and a certain other person in our staff team is better in communicating with those parents. So usually we take a look at who is going to talk with parents to support them, because parent support is really important, and we are still struggling. I think we still what we are planning to do now in the coming year, we are hoping to reopen again, and we are currently thinking of planning a kind of parent course when parents come to the school as new parents, that we are going to give them a kind of training period. And that will be mandatory. So a mandatory period that they have to come to certain courses and take courses, because parents are they're a little bit outside the schools. The children are in the school, they experience the school, they grow, they know what it is, and they develop. But the parents are outside, they don't really know what's happening in the school, they sometimes don't hear it from the child, and they become worried. So we really are thinking about how can we support our parents better in order to take away those fears and in order to give them more trust. Yeah. But it's still something that we have not figured out well. It's difficult.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the second part of the question is if there is a feedback that the staff gives to the parents on some regular basis, and if yes, what kind, when, who is responsible for it?
Kind of feedback? What do you mean?
A regular feedback that the staff gives to the parents about the child's whatever developments, or I don't know how to call it exactly, but what happens to the child? Because as you said, and I can confirm it as a parent in a democratic school, most of the time I don't know what my son is doing there and what is happening. And yeah, so it is very, because in our school there is a regular feedback, and it is valuable to me when even if it is just pictures, if it's already gives me some idea of what is going on. So what is the case in your school?
Yeah, that's quite difficult in our school, because we also value the personal space of the students and also their privacy. And if we are going to talk about what a student is doing, or what we as staff members, what our opinion is in how they develop or what they are doing, it is still our opinion. It is still in fact, what we try to encourage is that parents try to talk with their children, but on a in a way that they actually start to understand what the child is doing, not asking them what did you learn today, or but just invite them to tell a little bit about their day, how they were feeling, what they were experiencing, what they were doing, you know. And sometimes students don't want to talk about it. They refuse to talk about it, and that's hard. But it's for us also hard to talk about what students do, because also part of their privacy. It's also part of that we see them as full human beings, and also with their own choices, also the choices to talk with their parents or not. And that's really hard. It's really a difficult point of view. The only thing that we can do is talk with parents about general things about how generally the school is working, what we see generally happening, where what we can ask them, what did the child tell you, or what do you see, what do you see yourself? And then sometimes they come, oh yeah, but I see this and I see that, and then we say, okay, well, you know, it's sometimes also giving the parent the confirmation that they are seeking, though they see things, they still don't believe it is it tells them something, or that they can feel that they can trust in it.
So you don't have this regular feedbacks, or because when you don't have also grades, you don't have tests and whatever. So it is really the at least here the parents, most of the parents are wondering what is my child learning actually. Have he learned anything at all?
Yeah.
In the for example the last year.
Yeah. No, we talk with parents whenever something is okay, it's okay, and whenever there is a concern, we talk about a concern. But usually there is no concern. But we have twice a year parent meetings. We do that twice a year. So the parents are invited in the school, and we talk about how it's going at home, what their questions are, if they have concerns, and then we talk about their concerns in a general manner, but usually to try to take away their concerns as well, and to try to support them in the confidence in the child, and to look at their child, and to really see themselves that the child is actually doing well and learning, because you can see it as well. But we have to look for our ministry or for the inspectorate. We are keeping track records what has to be done. So we track whenever we see that a child is capable, for example, of reading or starting to read, or we can see that. You see that in the JC. You see that whenever they are, for example, when they enter the school, they have to write their name and and the time that they enter, and they have to fill in the time that they leave, and they have to calculate the number of hours that they've been in the school. So we have moments that we see that they can do it themselves, and that they can calculate, or that they can write.
Great, thank you. And the third part of Maggie's question is, what is exactly the role of the teachers and the staff? And can you actually define it in 1-2 sentences?
Yeah, the biggest role of being staff in the school is actually to support the organization of the school. So keep the business running, keep the school running. Which means do the administrational work, keep the contacts with the governments, have the parents talks, have the do all sorts of organizational things. Then next to that, we are part of the community, doing certain work in the school, maybe baking cakes, or creating lunches, or doing other things with students, playing games. We can do anything we like, playing music. And then next to that, we are just genuine human beings in the school, like anybody else. We are also partially, of course, role models in role modeling what it is to take responsibility, not only in the school, but also as an adult person. You're a role model as an adult person in the school. How do you behave? How do you talk with whenever there are visitors, whenever there is something happening? We have, of course, the task to keep an eye on the safety issues whenever there's something happening, or whatever there is something that we have to be aware of. It's our responsibility to react, of course. And then, yeah, doing the duties in the school is most of the work is doing the duties and having the school as an organization run.
Okay, I saw that Irina Davidova has a question, but just let me check if Maggie is okay with, has something more to ask. No, thank you very much. It was very informative, and I know that it's very hard to be defined the role of the teacher in the stuff. It's just because it's not just teaching, and it was very useful for me, the things that you said about the parents and the feedback, because I myself I always struggle when I because we have established this feedback, because we see that it's important for the parents, because they really struggle with not knowing, and it just stuck me when I wrote the question. I was actually stuck that maybe we need to work more with just feeling comfortable with not knowing than trying to provide more and more and more information. But I just wanted to say that I also feel that it's a very subtle balance between, okay, giving information and feedback, and at the same time you have to keep the privacy of this space, and to just to to emphasize the importance that kids actually have the space, because if they want to share something with the parents, they will. If they're not doing it, probably they don't.
Yeah,
And if they don't, they have their reasons, and that's okay.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we don't need to be we must not be those people who betray their trust, and just say everything to the parents. Oh, he did this and this and this, and then he was doing that, and then he had a fight with this guy, and yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then the thing is, then when you tell the parents about these quite private issues, the parent goes home and will probably talk with the child about it and said, hey, what I heard from the staff member, you did this or you did that. Can you imagine what this gives for an impression on the child? So it is really to safeguard they can make mistakes, they can have fights, they can have whatever they want, it's no problem. They're children, they need to learn, that's fine. But the support for the parent, and that's really the hardest thing, is in fact to give them the confidence that the model is working. And by talking with them, we deliberately talk much more about the supportive theories and about the supportive in general terms, how the school works and why it also works for the child, rather than telling them what the child is doing. Because it is an empty vessel. You can keep on telling them, oh, he's doing this and he's learning that and he's doing such and he's doing so, but they probably will come back because it doesn't satisfy them. So the best support is actually to really teach them in the model, to give them the support in what the supportive ideas are, and that the child is doing well, that we are not making any we have no concern about your child is doing well in the school. It's
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, another thing of staff, what I was thinking about is, of course, we are a coach or a mentor, or we give feedback whenever it's needed, whenever they ask for it. We teach whenever they ask for it. That's another part of our role as well. And to sometimes hold a mirror in front of their faces, just give a little bit of a reflection on, okay, so you're now in this situation, what are you going to do about it? Just give them a little bit of boundary that they can bump into and jump in a respectful way.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we need to make some boundaries here also, because we have like six minutes left. But we have Irina Davinova, Lydia wanting to ask questions, and we have 2 questions in the chat. So I suggest that anyone else who has questions, just to make a sign now or put them in the chat, so we would know what time we need to. We have the possibility to make it a little bit longer, but it's better to know, to have some visibility how longer.
Good.
So I think that Irina was first, and yeah, please ask your question.
Oh, my question is, can digitalization and innovation take place in a democratic school, or they are out of context there?
They're the core of the school. Yeah, I think that children learn because we are living in a digital world, and they take their digital instruments to the school, and they learn because they work with the instruments of today, with the tools of the culture that Peter Gray is talking about always. Children do play with the most important tools of the culture. And the tools of the culture at this moment is iPads, telephones, computers, games, internet, YouTube, whatever.
So you try to combine tradition with digitalization, digital, like combining tradition and digital, digital.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll leave the 2 questions in the chat for last, and please, Litka.
Hi, first time, sorry for my late. So maybe my question is not good. Maybe this is something which was taught. So excuse me for this. Maybe my question is a little bit connected with this: leave the kids alone and not mess with their work. But I'm interested if and how and who support the kids to know and to share his interests. I mean, and to follow his interest. For example, if there is some actions and classes, for example, which it can involve and try and explore if it's interesting for him, or there is some kind of program and some kind of menu with teachers' skills or something that the children can think about and maybe to share with his teacher or mentor. Or it's just waiting for the kid to say and to ask while he's playing or doing something.
Yeah, it's more natural, it's more organic. It's not about that they come to us as adults to talk about their interests or do things or share things. It is that they're together in this community, and they are involved in all sorts of activities, not only organized by adults, and we don't have these lesson rosters or whatever, but they can try out everything. They can usually what you see is that they go to other people and look what they are doing, or they start to join other people what they are doing, and they try out. And whenever an older, or whenever we are sitting together, we are talking about subjects, sometimes students hook on and they start discussing together with us about certain subjects that are maybe in the newspaper, or that we've heard or seen this television series, or everything can happen. So there are a lot of different ways that you can interact and have information and can get information from about what might perhaps at a certain moment sparkle an interest in somebody. I don't know. I don't know who is going to be interested in what. So yeah, they're part of the world. They find it out, and they also have the internet as one of the biggest sources that they can go on and find out about whatever their interest might be, and they can just hop. They sometimes they look for this, and then they do something for a moment, and then they leave it and they go to do something else, and that's also fine, because it's part of finding out what really makes you yeah, interested. Really, what is the thing for you to find out. We don't need to talk about it so much. If they want to talk about it, they come. It's not a problem.
Yes, of course. I'm sure that it's not like the adults, because we speak more about this and we know, but maybe it's connected more with this, that small children sometimes cannot tell. They don't really know. They just need to explore, and maybe some adults can see and can make some art or game in which it can not involve, but explore and can bigger. And maybe it means that in the school there are so many subjects and classes and stuffs which are happening.
Yeah, but when they're young,
I mean
that
this is happening, and the kid can go in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not staying, not waiting for the kid to say, let's do this.
No, right? they will explore probably, and they will go and find out, and you don't need to do so much about it. And especially young children, they're quite open. They will tell you what they want. So
thank you.
So the last two questions in the chat are again concern parents, and the first one is, what do you do if a parent like pushes their child to learn, which I guess it means to learn specific topics, and also I guess academic topics. Are you trying to help the parents realize what is best for the kid? Are you trying to keep them in the community, or rather you encourage them to rethink about their choice of schooling methods?
Yeah, I think this is something that happens as well in our school, that we have parents who actually suggest or pushes a child to do certain things, to learn certain things. And usually it doesn't work. It works contradictory, because the child usually doesn't do what parent asks, because especially when they are in a free environment where they are allowed to make free choices, they're going to make choices that usually the parent doesn't really like, especially when you're talking about the more rebellious types of children. Some children will comply, and they won't really feel very happy. I think they're not part of usually of the school community. They don't come to the point where they are really going to search for themselves inside what they want. They just comply to what somebody else wants, and they will not come out of that. We talk with the parents about it, but that's sometimes hard. It's sometimes hard to get them to a point to really trust their child. You can also have it that they don't want a child to do something. For example, we had a boy who was playing computer games, and he was playing computer games all day, and his parents were not happy about it, and he was put on a lot of restrictions at home, At home, he was not allowed to do anything on his computer, and he was not allowed to, because he was playing already for a full day in school computer. And so at a certain moment we talked with the parents, we said, you really have to give him his space and just let it loose, and you will see it will change. But it's really difficult. And finally, these parents, actually, we had a lecturer from a professor in Delft who talked about the importance of computers in learning. And then finally the parents said, okay, let's just give the boy his space, and we trust him. And they gave him the space at home as well. He was allowed to play at home, and he was okay. And I think from that moment on, I think within a few weeks, he started to take breaks, go away from the computer, play outside, and was doing totally different things during the day. So the moment the parents can let loose, you see the child start to become much more himself or herself, and much more make decisions because of their own intrinsic motivation. But it's really hard. We had a boy who had to learn to do a kind of test. His parent wanted him to do a test, and he had to train for this test. And then the parent said, you have to do that in the school. And she came to us, yeah, he has to do it in the school. Or the boy came to us and he said that he had to do it in the school. And we said, well, good luck to him. You know, you have a full day, good luck. If you need help, we're there. And then he usually didn't do it till almost 3 minutes before closing time. And then he said, oh, I'm too late. I still have to do this. And then we said, yeah, but you have to start perhaps a little bit earlier then. So that went on for several days in a row. And then we talked with the parent, and we said, you know, this is no use. He doesn't want to do this. He looks for excuses to not do the thing that you want him to do. So can you please let him go? And I think she let him go. She didn't ask for it anymore. And finally he passed his exam. It was not really a problem. But usually it's working contradictory to what parents really want. So it's good to have some examples as well. Perhaps at a certain moment when your school is running a little bit, you can get examples and tell parents as well what kind of examples you have. It can build perhaps trust also with for parents.
Okay, and the second question actually changed over time.
Yeah.
So it is, how much time per day students at your school are allowed to use digital devices for their whatever purposes they have, not directly related to learning facts or developing skills? I don't know if you have any means, or if you really follow for what means they use electronic devices. So the question is, how much time per day students at your school are allowed to use digital devices for their own purposes and not directly related to learning facts or developing skills?
They have all the time. And they usually bring their own devices. So when they're younger, they have iPads, and when they're older, they have computers. And having said that, they are learning facts and developing skills, because you have to realize that human beings don't do things that are really dull. And when things are really dull, you don't learn anything. So you always look for challenges. And whenever you have a challenge, you learn. And children playing with computers have challenges all the time. They're learning all the time. They're developing all the time. And we were talking yesterday about, for example, learning a different language. And what I was talking about also during my lecture is that we see that children learn English, for example, at a much younger age at this moment, because they are playing a lot. Even the younger children are playing a lot with English language computer games on iPads and on computers. A lot of it is, for example, in Minecraft or in League of Legends, or there's another game, I forgot the name, but it's really popular. It was really popular playing that game as well in the school. Children are natural learners. They learn the English language actually in a much better way than I learned it, because I'm still struggling. I was taught by an English teacher how the grammar of English worked, and in a book, and I never learned to speak English. If I take a look at how my own children have learned their English, they learned it because they learned it in a natural way, and they speak it much better than I do. They can use it much better. So yeah, don't be afraid that they don't learn anything.
Grazie, do you want anything else to add to this? So she wrote in the chat that so very true, thanks a lot. Well, we are only 10 minutes past 6, so I think we have
there was the second question still from I don't know the name. I can't read the name.
Oh, it was Graciela who she asked to change her second question with the last one. Is there really?
Okay.
Yeah.
May I ask another question?
Yeah, I think it would be the last question.
Okay, I think it's a good question. С оговорката, че влязах по-късно, тя може да е говорила за това, но how you show love to children?
How you show? Love to children? Yeah, how do you show love to anybody, to friends, or to? I think it is about having an equal relationship and having humor together, being capable of teasing each other a little bit, and then teasing back, you know. Of course, you're not really in a physical way. We're not allowed really to cuddle so much, but yeah, physically, I think children also come to you, and you treat them with love, and that's something that you show. It's something that you and the thing is that what I never really realized is when you have your own children, of course you love your own children, but when I started to work in the school, I started to love all the kids. Every child is such a unique personality, and it's such a unique person. But dealing with an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old student, you deal with such a person in a different way and show respect and work with them in a different way than you do with a young child of 4 or 5, maybe. But the basis, I think, is similar. You, at a certain moment when you feel that you are at a level of friendship, and that is something that has to build, and especially from children coming from the traditional system, that takes quite some time. And what we usually do is not really being too I rather wait for them to start to come to me and to start to interfere with me, or being part of an interaction where some other students who are longer in the school interact with me, because they don't trust adults so much when they come into school. They have had sometimes quite severe experiences in their previous schools, and we really let them. I really let them, and it's okay. And I'm just myself, and I do my things in the school, and I do my duties, and I talk with them in the same way that I talk to everybody else. But building this trust and building this friendship level, that takes really time.
Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very much, Christel. I wonder how come that no one asked this question that rises almost every time when we speak about Sudbury model. And it is the big question, how will a child know that he's interested of something if no one hasn't presented it or hasn't suggested it before?
Yeah, and the answer is, how can we ever present everything that is around in the world that might perhaps be the thing for the child to become interested in, and the children will find out themselves. Yeah, I found out myself as well. And and the school is not, we are not a vacuum, of course. The school is not the only place that children are interacting with. So they are interacting with their families, they're interacting with a whole other world outside of the school. And every child does that. And every child comes from this totally different world in the school, and brings their own stories, and brings their own experiences, and brings their own, their world into the school. So the world of the school is so much bigger than only the small building with the people inside. So you shouldn't really forget that we're talking, we're discussing, we're reading, we are listening, and even when I'm in the school, I hear new things, and I don't hear them from my colleagues, but sometimes I hear new things from students that come to the school and tell things that I didn't know. So how can we ever support a child in what is out there?
Yeah, thank you. It was actually a quote from a Sudbury school, a video from some Sudbury school, that the adults was always saying to the students, if you breathe, then you learn. So so it's kind of, learning is everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
It was really very valuable to us to have the chance to meet you. And
yeah, thank you.
Talk to you. We will also give because we have your permission to give your email to everyone presented in the meeting, so that if you have if you prefer to exchange directly with Christel, or if you have some really important question that you want to ask her, you might do this afterwards. And of course, you will get the recording of the meeting.
Nelly, do you want to maybe read some of the, I don't know, something from the chat that was, because there, I don't know if Christel is reading it. There are people sharing that they're very thankful.
Yeah.
I can't read. There's no translation button under it. So.
No, some of it is in English, actually.
Yeah, I know. That is what I can read.
Yes. But
yeah, well, yeah, some people wrote that they're thankful for the meeting and for organizing it, and also to Christel, that the meeting was very inspiring and informative. And it was from Veronica from Varna. She wrote that this meeting was a kind of how should I translate it? Like a cure Like you have a wound and you put some balm on. And really liberating.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so Maggie, do you want anything else to add?
Well, except from again my gratitude that you were willing to share your time and attention and the things you know, and I'm also very inspired by your
We don't hear you. Perhaps it had a cut. Well, I don't see most of you, but I wish you a really pleasant evening and see you another time.
Yeah, thank you. See you. Maybe we meet each other.
Yeah, I hope so.
If the borders are open, we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
See you. Bye. Bye bye. Thank you. Thank you very much for organizing as well.
Thanks.